Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our Analytics Half Hour. This afternoon, we're going to tackle goals and events in Google Analytics. Why use them? Which of the two to choose? And we'll look at why this kind of tracking is of extreme value to business and how you'd move ahead of your competitors just by doing it. Okay, well, let's introduce me first. I'm Vernon Riley. I'm a chartered mechanical engineer, and I've spent my career working with systems and processes. So I apply engineering insights to ensure the measurement and reporting systems go hand in hand with the business. The analytics is tailored to fit the business. And just a word about the interface in your browser if you're watching this live. It's fairly simple. To the right of the main window, there's a sidebar. One of the tabs is a chat window, and in that you can post messages. I'll do my best to keep up with the messages, but obviously, as you'll understand, I can't necessarily read all of the messages while concentrating on talking to everyone else. So if you've heard all of this, that's good. You can type something appropriate in the chat box. And with that, let's get going. Okay, so goals and events. If you've listened to the last couple of Analytics half hours, you'll have heard me talking about using events to track all sorts of specific activities. Some things on a website, but other things that are less commonly associated with websites. Things like calling phone numbers, opening an email that's been sent, the numbers of emails that have been sent to a particular mailbox, attendees to events that you're running if you're using an online system like Eventbrite, the new lists or customizations that have been added to your autoresponder or CRM system, new appointments being made, or when specified users pin something on Pinterest. Now, any or all of these and others can be of marketing interest, but crucially, most of these aren't the last stage, the completion of a process. They may not exist even within a sequence. And I want you to think about Google Analytics goals as the last stage, the outcome of a process, and to think of events as the steps, the constituent stages or steps, if you like, of the process. So they're very much like pages on the way to an end page. Now, I realize this clear distinction takes a bit of imagination given the way Google has laid out its interface, but let's stick with it as it provides a much clearer mapping onto the business and your marketing activities. Your business has processes. The processes have one or more steps, which we'll call events, and some of them are final events, the events at the end of a process. So if events are process steps, there can be many events per process and many events by extension per goal. Not all of these process steps will be worth recording, so you want to be selective. And you won't necessarily know beforehand which you want to record. And as a side note, this can be a reason to explore the use of Google Tag Manager or other JavaScript libraries. With a modern website, there's a good chance that the code will already exist that will allow you to capture the actions later on, and you won't need to make actual code changes to the website itself. Events are great because they've got a flexible hierarchical naming system, and you can put values or costs into them. Right? Now, that's fine. So what about goals? Some of the things Google Analytics has traditionally called goals are not obviously the last steps in processes, right? The numbers of pages visited or the duration of a session are more like hurdles to be jumped than the last stage in a process. But to be honest, these aren't the most powerful sorts of goals anyway. The more useful goal types are visits to a destination URL or events. I'd say final events. Right. So I'd like to suggest that wherever possible, you think of goals as what happens when you reach the end of a process. Right. And the good thing about goals is they have good quality sequential reporting within Google Analytics. All right. And it's a quirk of the reporting interface that you can't really put events together into a sequence, a funnel. Right. If you've got a sequence, you're better off using a sequence of pages, right? So if you want to record things that aren't real pages, you pretend. You arrange to tell Google Analytics that they were pages. They're sometimes called fake or virtual page views. That opens up all sorts of possibilities. Now, we'll look at this and these types in more detail in a later session, but for now, just remember that you can fake a sequence of pages. You can kid Google on that what's happening when the steps in question aren't real pages. So does every business use goals and events effectively? And if not, why not? Well, lots don't bother. They didn't pay for Google Analytics, and they assume that it comes not only ready to use, but fully configured. Or they find the terminology confusing and difficult, right? But there are other more serious reasons. Of course, goals and events have to be thought about. They have to be designed. They need to reflect a marketing process. And being cynical for a moment, if you don't have a marketing process, it's unlikely you can create meaningful steps and know what a completion looks like. Now, I did a survey of 12 accounts, some of which are big, and half of them didn't have their goals or events properly configured. And to be fair, this wasn't a bias-free sample because some of them are accounts I've been asked and have been sorting their analytics out for, right? Some I was just asked to audit and not asked to fix anything. Now, obviously, online e-commerce pays a lot of attention to this because that's the foundation of their business, right? And one of the accounts that I looked at belongs to a business that's purely internet commission-based, right? And it's very much on top of this issue. But it's not just small businesses. One of the others was a big business. It got 6.25 million page views in 6 months. It got no events or goals configured. Now, the difficulties, apart from needing to sit down and think about goals, can be split into two types. There's the business difficulty of defining a marketing process, and there's the technical difficulty of getting the end-to-end process to work, multiple systems or multiple domains. Let's explain what I mean that without trying to go into the terminology. First, the business issue. What's a marketing process? Well, I'm going to suggest engineering insights can help this, right? We'll think about a financial product. The finance company has got a long application form with lots of steps. They invented that to help them decide whether you're a fit and proper person to buy or take advantage of their product. And it can be similar in your business, right? What are the steps that people need to follow in order to prove or help you decide that they are fit and proper to become customers? And if so, for which product or service? Right now, the engineering piece is sometimes we may have to invent steps and outcomes and get our customers or our prospects to walk through this stage, this step in the process. So you'll have all sorts of marketing processes. There'll be people who added to lists, signed up to lists, opted into some form of communication. These are candidates, people who bought something, downloaded something, right? But the critical point is, are they outcomes that the CEO would value or that the FD would think were tangible measurements, right? Because if they've got business significance, if they've got significance to those beyond marketing and are capable of affecting the bottom line, then you've really got a process, right? And when I work with clients who've asked for help with this, I've got a trademark process we walk through in order to help them generate this kind of definition, this clarity around the process that they're going to use. But what about the other difficulty, the technical difficulty? Well, we'll get to that if we've got a process that's capable of affecting revenue and profit, and if we've got the variance that we may need because they're product or service specific. So, technical difficulty. Well, sometimes we'll have multiple domains. Typically, you've got a website and you take a couple of steps on your website and you pass it across to a third-party site. It might be a shopping cart, it might be a payment system, it might be a CRM system, right? Before coming back. Now, the technical problems come from two sources, right? One is that Google Analytics uses cookies, right? It's tied to your domain, right? And you've got multiple domains here, and you may not be able to control or even influence the code on the other side. Sometimes you do, right? It's not all black, at least enough to sort this out. It could be a hosted system for a CRM or other provider, and you can get your analytics code onto that site, right? And you can accept that the pain is worth solving to make sure your overall measurement process doesn't get destroyed by this movement. And some third-party providers are good. ClickBank when I experienced it, played ball. Lead Pages does the same. I've seen Marketer, a number that allow you to put your analytics code onto their site. And in these cases, you want somebody skilled in analytics to follow the instructions of the third party and then to be able to run tests. They'll need to be aware that in many cases, the documentation is still primarily aimed at the older asynchronous version of Google Analytics, not the modern universal analytics that was released at the back end of 2013. And they'll need to deal with the cookie issues and test the whole system. There are other systems, though, that are much less well behaved, right? They sometimes belong to banks or surrogates of banks, so PayPal and merchant gateways. They don't allow code on their site, right? So until recently, the best you may have been able to do here was to watch for the returning visitor, right? And try and exclude that third party, that gateway, as a referral source. But with the advent of universal analytics, you may be able to capture signals from the hidden messages, right? And push these artificially as data into Google Analytics. For instance, SagePay, which is a payment provider I've used and know well, has a good number of hidden messages that pass backwards and forwards whilst the payment process is underway. And you could use those signals to fake pages from the point of view of Google Analytics. So you could pass that information into Google Analytics and give the impression that there was a process underway when nothing otherwise would seem to be happening, right? But even if you can't do much, right, and sometimes that will be the case, you can normally prevent the third-party site being seen as a referrer of a visitor back to your website. Because if that happens, you'll tend to have two processes. You'll have the start and the end on the diagram with a break in the middle, right? If you get this done the right way, you'll certainly have one process, maybe with a hole in the middle, but one process. Right, and just to stress, I've used the shopping cart as an example. There are many web-based processes that involve multiple websites, right? And all of these are going to have similar challenges. So you've got that, the multiple domains, but even if they're not on multiple domains, you may have multiple systems, right? In a more established, systematized businesses, there'll be multiple systems and there'll be data being collected on each of these systems, and you need to tie the data together to get clear feedback on the success or failure of the processes. Now, Google Analytics could do this, or you may want to rely on another platform and suck the data out of Google Analytics. In any case, if you remember that significant businesses are built around processes, and the goals in Google Analytics are the completion of marketing processes, with events making up the significant steps, you won't go far on. You'll get an idea as to what you're aiming for. And if you look in a minute, you'll see the kind of powerful reports that you get. So I'm going to tell you with no shadow of a doubt that goals and events are worth using. Categorically, yes, right? Once you get the tangible relationship to marketing processes that affect the bottom line of the business, right? Now, I'm not saying that creating the processes are easy, but the effect on your business of having such processes and measuring those successes and failures is dramatic. You've suddenly handed yourselves the tools for improvement. And if you've got a defined set of steps within a defined process or processes, you can work progressively to improve matters. So, give me a flavor, Vernon. What do the key reports in Google Analytics look like? Well, you've got a goal funnel visualization report. You'll see I've circled it in, or I put a red box around it. It's down in the conversions bit, right? And I've done this because numbers of you probably haven't ever seen a report like this, because if you haven't got goals, you won't see one, right? Now, we'll not discuss it in detail, but you'll see that it's a fairly nice visual picture, right, of the numbers coming in and the numbers flowing down a sequence with the numbers that drop off at each stage. So if you arrange that your significant process steps look like pages, I say real or fake, if you need it for Google Analytics point of view, then Google Analytics will do all of the addition and produce these reports, right? You don't have to do any of the donkey work, right? So you set it up and it runs, and you can set your time periods and you just print these off, right? And this is the foundation of some really interesting discussion and improvement in most businesses, right? because you've got the numbers that complete and the numbers that drop out at each stage. So you've got the goal funnel visualization report, right? And another one you've got is goal flow, right? Now, there are some subtle differences between this and the visualization report, right? Many are to do with how out of sequence steps are dealt with, which I don't want to go into. But one thing or a couple of things are really useful to most people and mean that they'll want to look at this. One is that you can apply segmentation, right? So you can look at the source, the medium that people came from, or the country, or other things like that, right? The other is that you can look back in history. If the goal hadn't been defined, you can use this report to find out what would have happened had the goal been defined. So if now you define a goal, you can look back 3 months and you can see what happened over the recent history. So hopefully I'm giving you a clear idea of the value of goals and events, how to think about them, and how to use Google Analytics. Now, Google Analytics can produce more reports, right, than these, right, about goals, but these are some of the most valuable ones, the ones that you'll see early on, right, and you should think about using those. So what have we said? Well, we've said, for the sake of simplicity and clarity, think about events in the analytics as the process steps, as goals being the final step in a process, and putting pages, real or fake, to help Google Analytics show the sequence that people followed, complete with dropouts, right? So I'm hoping that that's made some sense. If you want to type some questions in the chat box, that's fine. You go ahead. Maybe a slight delay, but we'll see if we can answer them. And if you want to talk further, my contact details are on the next page, right? There's my LinkedIn profile. There's my email, and there's the web address. So I'll look forward to talking to you the next time. I hope this has been useful and you start thinking about how you can best get to grips with goals and events in your business. This is Vernon Riley saying bye for now, and I'll look forward to talking to you soon.